Hi, good afternoon, everyone. Thank you for taking the time to attend this webinar with Professor Osman Bakar. My name is Muhammad Nasir, head of the SRP program at RSIS. Our gratitude to Professor Osman Bakar for agreeing to speak in this webinar. I've had the honor of hosting Prof. Osman some 8 years ago at Simply Islam when he spoke on his book, Quranic Pictures of the Universe. And over the years, I've met him regularly at ISTEC IIUM. So I will now invite Dr. Muhammad Ali, a senior fellow at SRP, to chair the webinar. Dr. Muhammad, please.
Thank you, Mr. Nasir. Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to the SRP webinar entitled Philosophical Encounters, Islam and the Religious Other. And thank you for joining us today. I am delighted to see many of you joining us today for what promises to be a stimulating and enlightening discussion. This webinar is organized by the SRP program at RSIS. And it is going to focus on the notion of Islam and the religious other from the dimension of philosophy in Islamic tradition. In our increasingly interconnected world, the study of Islamic philosophy in Western settings serves as a testament to the rich tapestry of ideas between civilizations. It highlights the profound contributions of Muslim philosophers to the global intellectual landscape. Today, we embark on a journey to explore the intricate tapestry of Islamic philosophy and its encounters with the religious other. Our esteemed speaker today, Professor Dr. Osman Bakar, brings a wealth of knowledge and expertise to the discussion today. Currently holding the Al-Ghazali Chair of Epistemology and Civilizational Studies and Renewal at the International Institute of Islamic Thought and Civilization, Malaysia, Professor Osman is a leading authority in Islamic thought and civilization. He was formerly distinguished professor and director of Sultan Omar Ali Saifuddin Center for Islamic Studies, SUESIS, at University of Brunei Darussalam. Dr. Osman was also formerly Malaysia Chair of Islam in Southeast Asia at the Prince Talal Al Walid Center for Muslim Christian Understanding, Georgetown University at Washington, D.C., and Deputy Vice Chancellor for Academic and Research at University of Malaya. With a distinguished career spanning several prestigious institutions around the world, Professor Osman's insights are invaluable as we delve into the complexities of Islamic philosophy. And throughout our seminar today, we will examine Islam's perspective on the religious other through the lens of Islamic philosophy. We will explore how Muslim philosophers navigate encounters with diverse cultures, civilizations, and religious traditions in their quest for truth. Moreover, we will seek to understand the role of Islamic philosophy in shaping interreligious relations in the contemporary pluralistic societies of the Malay world. So, in the spirit of intellectual curiosity and mutual understanding, let us engage in a thoughtful dialogue and exploration. I encourage all of you to actively participate, ask questions, and share your perspectives as we embark on this intellectual journey together today. And may I remind that for those who wish to ask questions or give comments, kindly type them in the chat box available below in this Zoom facility. Without further ado, it is my honor to welcome and invite our distinguished speaker, Professor Dr. Osman Bakar, who will guide us through the rich terrain of Islamic philosophy and encounters with the religious other. Join me in extending a very warm virtual welcome to Professor Osman Bakar. Professor, please.
Thank you, Brother Muhammad Ali, the moderator. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh, and a very good afternoon. First of all, let me thank Brother Muhammad Nasir, the person who contacted me, invited me to this program, this event. And again to Brother Muhammad Ali, who is going to moderate, and to everyone, distinguished guests and all listeners. I would like to thank the organizer of this event, Studies in Interreligious Relations in Plural Societies of RSIS. I feel honored to be invited to speak on the topic which I share is indeed a very important one for our times. The topic philosophical encounters, and the subtopic Islam and the religious other. It is a topic on which I have written a little bit, but mostly I dealt with the issue of interreligious dialogue, and of course the content of the discourse, of the discussion is philosophical in nature, and I think that's what the organizer wishes me to present. So before I proceed, is my voice quite clear? Okay, all right, thank you.
Yes, Prof.
All right, thank you. Now, I did not have a proper slides, but I do prepare 2 slides in which I jotted down some of the points that I would like to discuss. But before that, again, I would like to emphasize that the topic would like us to deal, as I understand it. This topic is about really how Islam interacts, how Islam engages with the religious other, mainly at the philosophical level. Now, let me go to my the first slide. I just want to clarify the key terms used in the topics. Hopefully, with that clarification, things will be, many issues will be clear to all of us. Now, basically, the word Islam, there are basically there are 3 major terms. There are 3 key terms in the topic. First is Islam. The second one is the religious other, and the third term is philosophical encounter. So I would like to explain why I understand these 3 key terms in the topic. First of all, the word Islam. The word Islam conveys several meanings. To be exact, it has 4 different meanings, all of which are closely related to each other. Islam is a popular term uttered by many people, but I must say that despite that, Islam as an idea, as a concept, is still widely misunderstood, and this misunderstanding is certainly not positive. It's not good for our humanity, of our world, because Islam accounts for 1/5 of the world's population. So But I want to be more philosophical here in addressing this word Islam. So as I said, it has 4 different meanings, all of which are closely related to each other. First, the first meaning, it has the etymological meaning of submission and peace. Peace is an essential consequence of submission. All right. The first meaning, this etymological meaning, what we mean by that is that we are going to the root word. We have Salima, that's the first verb form, but what is more relevant, which direct or concern to us, is Aslama, means to submit, to surrender. And from that, we have the word basically Islam. So Islam is usually translated as submission, surrender, and peace. As it, peace is an essential consequence of submission. Now, second, it has the conceptual meaning, more precisely philosophical, theological meaning of submission to divine will. Yes, the general meaning of submission is retained, but this time we are going more technical in the sense, submission to what? Submission to whom? So, and this where theology and philosophy intervene, going to the Quran. That the Quran makes clear that this submission is submission to the divine will, the concrete expression of which in Islam is the Sharia. Now, the third meaning, or it has the scriptural. The third meaning is scriptural, the meaning of religion, basically. So Islam is the meaning of the religion, which is mentioned in the Quran as ad-din. And fourth, it has the institutional meaning of the societal pillars of the religion. So all the 4 meanings are present in the Quran. In the Quran, the conceptual or philosophical, theological meaning of the Islam is identical to its etymological meaning. This is quite significant, but of course, it is quite peculiar. I mean, it is in. We know very well that in Arabic, the idea of submission and peace are semantically related, and for most cases, we see that there is a convergence, there is identification between etymological meaning and conceptual meaning. So what it means is that if we understand the etymological meaning of a particular word, then we have gone to a great length already. We already we have covered a considerable distance already in our understanding, precisely because there is very little gap between the etymological meaning and the conceptual meaning. And the most important, basically the core content of that conceptual meaning, is philosophical and theological in nature. Now, I mentioned here the scriptural meaning of religion ad-din. That one we can refer to Surah Al-Ma'idah, the verse, basically the last verse revealed in the Quran, the last verse of the Quran to be revealed. Well, there is a difference of opinion. Some say that it is not, but as far as I'm concerned, the fact that Allah declares in this verse that I have completed, I have perfected for you your religion. Al-yawma akmaltu lakum dinakum. Today I have perfected for you your religion. Ad-din. Wa atmamtu alaykum ni'mati wa raditu lakumul Islam madina. So I have chosen, or I've completed my favor to you, and I've chosen for you your religion. Now, that's quite clear. So the whole content of the Quran is identified with the word deen. So Islam is the name of the religion. So Islam is the deen, is the content of the Quran. And in the fourth meaning, I said the societal pillars of the religion. Islam refers to that. Now, actually, it is not mentioned in the Quran in an explicit way, but certainly what we know is that for example, the 5 pillars of Islam are all taken from various verses in the Quran. So the 5 pillars referring to the witness of Tawheed, the witness of unity of God, and the witness of the messengership of Muhammad, and then the Salat, the 5 daily prayers, the fasting during Ramadan, the Zakat, and the Hajj. All these, I'm referring to this as the institutional meaning or the societal pillars of the religion. But a hadith, what is popularly known as the Gabriel hadith, the Gabriel hadith, Jibreel alayhi salam, that the meaning of Islam is mentioned there. You know very well, if I just recall, remind us that one day Gabriel alayhi salam approached the Prophet and his circle of friends and start kind of question and answer session between Gabriel and the Prophet and his companion. The Gabriel asking, what is Islam? And the Prophet answered, those 5 pillars. He was referring to the 5 pillars of Islam, the 5 rukun Islam. So that's quite clear that the word Islam is identified with the 5 pillars. Then when the Prophet answered that, the Gabriel said, you have answered correctly. And then Gabriel proceeded to ask the second question, what is Iman? And the Prophet answered, giving the 6 articles of faith. Again, Gabriel said, the Prophet has answered correctly. And then what is Ihsan? Ihsan, and then the Prophet answered, as is reported, that one should worship Allah as if he or she sees Allah. If not, then he or she should be conscious. He should be conscious then Allah sees us. Again, Gabriel explained, or rather, the Prophet, that he has answered correctly. Now, these are the 3 fundamental elements, because when the Prophet asked, do you know who that was, the person? The Prophet said, no. Then the Prophet said, that was Gabriel who came to teach us religion. So in other words, religion has 3 major components: Iman, Islam, and Ihsan. So I just want to emphasize here one of the meanings of Islam referring to the societal pillars of the religion. Now, I just mentioned, I want to go back to the second meaning, where I said that the etymological meaning converges or is identical to the conceptual definition, because in the Quran, if you refer to Surah Al-Baqarah, the 2nd chapter, verse 112, the word Aslama is mentioned in a very inclusive way. In other words, basically that verse said that Bala man aslama wajhahu lillah wa huwa muhsinun falahu ajru inda rabbih wa la khawfun alayhim wa lahum yahzanun. So that verse, actually that verse was scolding the basically the exclusivism of some Jews and Christians who argue that only by becoming Christian or by becoming a Jew that he or she is saved. So in other words, salvation was defined exclusively. But the Quranic verse took a different view by saying that no, Yeah? On the contrary, whosoever submits, aslama, who submits, surrenders himself to God, and he is something doing good, then he or she is saved. In other words, salvation there is described in an inclusive way. Now, this is important, that the Quran takes the generic name of submission as being the very nature of the religion, all religions, not just the Islam that was brought by Prophet Muhammad SAW, but basically all the other religions that originated from God. All right. Now let me next to the explain the meaning of the religious other. What do you mean by the religious other? We understand this term to simply mean that with respect to a particular religion, there exists other religions with their respective identities, about which it has accumulated views and with which it has conducted relations in one form or another during the entire history of their encounters. So in the present discussion, we are discussing about the religion we are talking about is Islam, and basically you want to understand the where Islam stands on the issue of religion and the religious other that I've explained, that I need to explain now. So basically, we are interested to know Islam's theory of the religious other, and in the light of that theory, how Islam engaged itself with other religions, especially through the avenue of philosophy. In other words, in history, what happened in history, basically, as far as the topic is Islam and the religious other is concerned. So that's what we mean by that, by that religious other. Now, and third, let me explain the meaning of philosophical encounter. The idea of philosophical in the traditional sense, and that includes Islam, is distinguished from the non-philosophical in two main respects, namely, one, the form of knowledge being addressed, and number two, the methodological approaches to the truth being employed. This is what I understand, because we say we are referring to philosophical, and we have to differentiate that from what is normally considered as non-philosophical. And I'm taking the position, the traditional position, for a reason which I shall tell you. All right. So basically now the form of knowledge, knowledge is not of just one form. There are several forms, there are levels of knowledge. There is a hierarchy of knowledge depending on the object with which that knowledge is concerned. All right. So what I mean by the philosophical is that it pertains to the higher forms of knowledge that transcend empirical truths, including the rational, supra-rational, metaphysical, and symbolical categories. So all these types of knowledge, are being addressed in the Quran. I think that is important to point out. All these types of knowledge are being addressed in the Quran. The philosophical emphasizes human knowledge and experiences, emphasizes human knowledge and experiences of the higher order that are universal in the sense that they are common to all religions, to all cultures, and to all civilizations. Likewise, the Quran refers to a multiplicity. So now the Quran refers to a multiplicity of methodological approaches to knowledge. I'm talking here about basically what is contained in the Quran. Yeah? So earlier I basically made it clear that there are several forms of knowledge, but now there are several basically methods, approaches to knowledge and truth, such as ratiocination, intuition, metaphysical speculation, contemplation, mathematical spirituality even, and applied symbolism. So all these terms that I mentioned are basically translations of the approaches that we have in the Quran, approaches to knowledge and truth. All these different methodological approaches naturally lead to the acquisition of different forms of knowledge, and all of which may be described as philosophical. So you're talking about philosophical encounters in history, then we are not just referring to one form of knowledge, several forms, and we are referring to different kinds of cognitive experiences, psychological experiences. Of course, this is not unique to the Quran. Basically, all the approaches that I mentioned are to be found in other cultures and traditions, in other sacred books. But what I would say, what the Quran is doing is simply to recast, to represent all these ancient ideas from the perspective from the unitary perspective of Islam. Now, the meaning of philosophy and philosophical that is understood here is thus much broader than the rational or analytical philosophy that has engaged the modern mind for the last 1 century or so. It's kind of one uniform kind of methodology, which of course would not go well with the contents of the Quran. Now, I would argue that it is the understanding of philosophical encounters according to this broad understanding that would help us to understand, to better appreciate Islam's views of the religious other. So that's basically a little long qualification of the key term, but I think we will come back to this. We'll come back to this again, once we discuss about the encounter of Islam and the religious other, both at the level of concepts and at the level of history. Now, the next point, basically, that I would like to discuss now is the Islam's theory of the religious other. What is Islam's theory of the religious other? I would like to present that it's not so in other words, what I'm going to say is not simply a kind of my own opinion, but I believe it is a position taken up by the Quran in particular, and more generally by the religion of Islam. Now, in the light of my clarification of the key terms in the topic of discussion, there is Islam, the religious other, and philosophical encounter, I'm arguing that Islam is in possession of a rather comprehensive universal theory of the religious other. I will explain in due course the fundamental elements of this theory. Now, I would like to emphasize it is very important for us to understand this theory if we are to appreciate, or if we are to understand basically, if we are to appreciate Islam's conduct of interreligious relations in history. In other words, the theory that mainly guides Islam's engagement with the religious other. Now, basically, this within the framework of Islam's theory of the religious other, I would like to make this quite a big claim, which is the following: the first philosophical encounter between Islam and the religious other did not happen in its earthly history, but rather it was transhistorical. Basically, it was in the Quran. The Quran was revealed to the prophets, and basically this pertaining to the religious order was mainly conducted in Medina, where the seeds of Islamic civilization were planted. Now, this is something that may be a surprise to some people. In other, when we talk about Islam's engagement with the other, basically we talk what happened in history. But since, as far as I know, there have been very few really investigation, scholarly investigation into the encounter between Islam and the religious other in the scripture itself, yeah, than in the Quran. So I make this emphasis. Yeah. Let me repeat: the first philosophical encounter between Islam and the religious other did not happen in its earthly history, but rather it was transhistorical. Now, what do I mean by transhistorical? Well, what I mean is that what I mean is basically that the idea of Islam and the other religions, the religions that were introduced, that were revealed previously before Islam. For example, Judaism, Christianity, but that is only among the Abrahamic religions. But there were other families of religion. All right. So the question of to what sort of allusion the Quran made to the non-Abrahamic religion doesn't mean, I mean, the ideas, as I see it, yeah? This idea of Islam and other religions was conceived in the divine mind before the Quran was revealed. The argument of the Quran, the argument of Islam is that God has revealed has sent many prophets, many messengers in the past. And of course, as far as God is concerned, in the Quran it said that that religion was Islam. And but the form of that religion the form of Islam was not the same throughout. Because the Quran says, verily, the religion before God is Islam. And some traditional interpreters of the Quran, including Ibn Abbas, radiallahu, when he said that that verse was referring to the religion that was sent to all the previous prophets. The meaning of that was Islam understood in the sense of submission. In other words, the religion accepted by God is the religion of submission to the divine will. But the submission to the divine will, that varied from prophet to prophet. So while the spirit of that, the knowledge content of that religion was one, the spirit was one, which is submission, but the form of submission varied from prophet to prophet in accordance with the needs of different times and spaces. So that was the position taken up by the Quran, how the Quran looks at the previous religions. Now, so when we say that the idea of this Islam and the other was transhistorical, yes, it was conceived in the divine mind. Then God revealed that idea to the Prophet Muhammad, and then we have the Quran. So basically, the Quran embodies ideas that included about relations between Islam and each other before this manifests themselves in history. Yes, it manifests itself first in the city of Medina, where the Prophet was. That's what very clear that in Medina during the time of the Prophet Muhammad, he addressed, he discussed, he addressed several issues religious issues, especially spiritual issues, with followers of the different religions present in Medina, mainly the Jews and the Christians, but there were also other followers of other religions. Now, that's what I mean by trans-historical, basically. So the argument of the Quran is that as being the last revealed book, it has to be concerned. The Quran has to be concerned with the other religions. So that's why we can say that basically Islam was born as a religion that was already conscious of the religious other. It was not something that it learned later from experiences later in history. No, it experienced at the time of its own birth. You know very well that the Quran was revealed over a period of more than 22 years, and 10 years in Medina. There were interreligious relations in Medina itself, and this is a very important thing. Now, let me just talk about here some of the fundamental Quranic elements of the theory of the religious other. Yeah, but important is to understand that there is such a theory. Islam did formulate, based on the Quran, Islam formulated a theory of the religious other, and this is what I call the Islam theory of the religious other, that serves as basically as the guide, basically the main guide of Islam's conduct of inter-religious relationship, how it engages itself with others throughout history. So in the remaining page, in the remaining minutes of my presentation, of course, I would like to refer to these highlights, basically, of the encounter of Islam and the other in history, both in the encounter with regions in the West and in the East, including China, and then we see, for example, how he conducts that, but before that, again, I just want to explain clearly what are the fundamental Quranic elements of the theory. When I say the Islam's theory of the religious other, what are these fundamental elements? Well, I just select several important ones. This is a topic that is really that needs further studies, further inquiry. Yeah? So I would advise the young students, young scholars, this is an area that it is worth, doing some research to go deeper into the theory. Remember, as I said, if you want to understand how Islam engages with other religions throughout history, then this theory is important to be understood. Now, I think the most important element of the theory is the idea of the Quranic idea of universality of religion. In a few verses, the Quran refers to the fact that God has sent prophets or sent messengers to practically every branch of the human family. Yes, the Quran does not mention every branch of the human family that has received this, but simply in principle it mentioned that God has sent to every community, to every ummah in the world. Some of the messengers, their names are mentioned, but others are not mentioned. But what important is that the divine revelation has been given, has been sent to prophets in all cultures and in their own language. The Quran added that the prophets were sent to teach, to spread the divine message in their own language. Now, this is very important idea. In other words, long before Islam met the other religions, encountered in the other religion, the Quran has already stake its claim, has already made its claim. No, it said and confidently, the Quran says that God has sent prophets to all communities, all branches of humanity. And what is the wisdom of this? Well, later on in history, as Muslims spread over the globe, to the west as far as Spain, and then to the east as far as China. I think in other words, Muslims who read the Quran know very well this has been mentioned in the Quran, even though the name of the religion is not mentioned, but they were interested to know whether there were other religions that could be traced to their divine origin. I think it is a very, very important idea, the idea of universality of religion, that which means also that the implication of this is that there is basically the Quran basically rejects the idea of the chosen people. In other words, there's no specific race or group that is favored by God in terms of receiving revelations from Him, but on the contrary, everyone, every branch of the human community has received that. Yeah. So it is an idea that is has great potential, basically, to bring about the human minds together to understand this the idea of universal revelation. Now, the second idea, the second important element of the theory is the Islam and the idea of true religion. I referred here earlier when I mentioned that verse which said that verily the true religion before God is Islam, not Islam. I mean, according to the most authoritative traditional interpretation, that it means referring to the Islam understood as a religion of submission. So Islam or the Prophet Muhammad was only the last form of this religion of submission. Now, the third element, Islam as the inclusive religion. Now, of course, there's a close conceptual relationship between inclusivity and universality. To be universal implies to be inclusive, basically. And so the idea that it is very interesting that several verses of the Quran that refers that in other words, those who are saved, the idea of universal salvation that I referred earlier, the question of whoever submits himself to God and he is doing good and he will be saved. In other words, the idea of inclusivity, which is important, which has implication for how we understand the other, the religious other. How do you understand the religious other? How does Islam understand the religious other? What sort of attitudes Islam has towards the religious other? It's all guided by these fundamental ideas. All right. That's why I mentioned here. There's a question here, of course. How do we define otherness? When you say the religious other, you are talking about otherness. Otherness means separateness. It means differences rather than commonalities, because commonalities bring us this sense of togetherness. Now, I would like to emphasize here that these elements of the theory of the religious other, in a sense, explains to us how Islam views other religions. In a sense, it judges the other religions in this light. So the question, I say, otherness is defined in terms of degrees of attachment to Tawhid. the unity of God, because the central message of Islam is the unity of God, the unity of the divine attributes, qualities. Right? So, in other words, what the technical word that is used in Islam is Tawheed. So, basically, how far a region is from Islam, or how near it is from Islam, Islam answers that question by looking at how is its commitment to the concept of the idea of unity of God, and the religious other is understood in that sense. So that's why, for example, we have a category of religion which Islam refers to as the people of the book, Ahlul Kitab. In other words, here the symbol, the representation of the religion is the book, the idea of the sacred book. Of course, Islam being the inclusive religion, if we look at the structure of Islam as a religion, to appreciate how inclusive it is, you just look at the 6 articles of faith. What is Iman? What is faith? Faith has 6 articles. So first, believe in the one God. Well, that is the most inclusive principle that we can have. In other words, yes, we have followers of different religion, yet they believe in the in one God. They believe in the God as the absolute, as the infinite. In other words, that belief is not exclusive to one particular religion. But of course, Islam accepts that as its own first article of faith. And then the second is belief. Belief in the angels. There are spiritual beings that religions call angels, right? Malaika. Yeah. So that is not something that is exclusive, right? It is an inclusive concept. Now the third, belief, right, in all the in the books, believe in all the sacred books. But in the case of Islam, what it means is that for a Muslim to be a Muslim, for a Muslim to be considered as the follower of Islam, he or she must accept in principle all the previous books that have been revealed by God to humankind. The Quran is simply the last of that. Before that, we have the Bible, the Torah, and so on. And in fact, so many other religions have their own book. But this is Islam makes the book as an element that basically as a spiritual element that binds different religions together. In the case of Islam, it has to accept that, right? That also applies to other prophets. Believe in the prophets. Now, this is what I mean just now. The inclusivity, how inclusive, or the kind of commitment that Islam gives to in terms of its commonality with the other religion. So otherness, basically in history, Muslims, scholars of the religion, try to explain, right? In other words, the position of each region. Each region is evaluated in that light. So when an example, when Islam reaches China, Muslim ulama, the Chinese Muslim ulama, the scholars of Islam in China, they encounter especially Confucianism, especially the books that are attributed to Confucius. So they sought to study those books in the light of this otherness. I mean, to what extent that the content of, say, of the Confucian books, exhibit this idea of unity of the divine reality. May not use the word God, but referring to the symbolism of the heaven, the unity of the heaven. All right. Now, so I think basically this is the guiding principle of how Islam dealt with the other regions wherever it encountered throughout history, beginning from Medina itself. So I would like to as I said in the remaining minutes of my presentation, I would like just to highlight some of the examples of these particular encounters with Islam and the religious other at the level of philosophy. But perhaps one more thing that I did not explain, because I said that regarding my claim that the first encounter of Islam and the religious other is in the Quran. Now, which implies that as based on the topic that I'm discussing now, what it means is that that basically there is such a thing as the philosophical dimension of the Quran. If I argue that Islam and religious other were first encountered in the Quran, then we must accept the idea that basically there is a philosophical dimension in the Quran. Well, I'm certainly saying much more than that. I would say that philosophy is understood by the Muslim philosophers as the heart of the Quran. A very good examples of writing were written by Farabi, who lived in the 8th century and 9th century, who explained the meaning of basically the heart of religion is a philosophy. And that's how the Muslim philosophers later on in history tried to understand the other religions. So they approach it from the perspective of philosophy, because the rest, what is other than the philosophy in the Quran, that refers to various aspects of social life, basically about societal life, that is something different. And the word Farabi himself used the word millah, not the word deen. In other words, when Al-Farabi sought to distinguish between religion and philosophy, yes, he used the word falsafa or hikmah for philosophy, but for what is contrasted to that, the heart of the Quran, what is contrasted to that is basically the millah, which has been translated into religion rather than the religious dimension of the community. That has given rise to confusion. People sort to understand, no, because those who not go to the original Arabic, then people think that Muslim philosophers were putting philosophy higher than deen, religion understood as deen, but that's not the case. What Al-Farabi, for example, contrasted with hikmah as the heart of the Quran is millah, refers to the external externalities, the external dimensions of the social life, not really into the spirituality or the central teachings of the religion. All right, now basically what is interesting is that if we read the lives of Muslim philosophers, some of them, studied philosophy under Christian teachers. Christians studied under Muslim teachers. Jews studied under Muslim. So in the community of philosophers of the Abrahamic, religion, there's a kind of, that easiness, it's kind of basically a lot of the mutual understanding among them regarding this philosophy, although they belong to different religious faith. But when it comes to philosophy, they're almost united. Now this is interesting because the philosophers understand philosophy is something which is universal in nature, which is common to all different cultures and civilizations, as I said earlier. So they do not see philosophy as something which divides them according to religious lines. On the contrary, they share those truths, and I think they played a very important role in contributing to unity of intellectual life in Islamic civilization. For example, that was happened in Baghdad under the Abbasid period, for example, or even that before the Umayyad the period. So you have community of scholars of different, consisting of individuals, philosophers of different faiths, but there's something that bound them together. That's the the universality of the ideas, the universality of the ideas with which the adjustment. Yeah. So that's what happened in Andalusia. So in Andalusia, again, we have the intermixing, or rather even these philosophers of different faiths, having conversations, camping activities together. You remember, many of you know what about the Baitul Hikmah, the House of Wisdom in Baghdad. All right, the House of Wisdom. Excuse me. You know, that institution, that research institution, which was funded by the state, you have there scholars, researchers, you have Jews, Christians, Muslims, and even Hindus from India and from Persia. There's Christians, or from the representing the former Greek, the Greek tradition. So when we see that unity of consciousness, I'm not saying that is 100% like that, but on the most part, that's what we had. Of course, when we go to the science of Kalam, for example, because the science of Kalam is different from philosophy. Science of Kalam was referring the idea of it's more kind of partisanship or commitment to one's religion. In other words, the idea of attachment to one's religion is more visible. Yes, you have, because we have Muslim Kalam, you have the Jewish Kalam. Yeah, for example, yes, we did have that, but on the most part, what we had was a dialogue, constant dialogue, regular dialogue between the forces of religion on many issues in the realm of philosophy. So the phrase is the religious other becomes something different. Well, you know, we give it a different connotation, different significance, in fact. So yes, it is true. Then the idea of the otherness was not entirely absent, because that will be impossible to that as long as religions, different religions exist with their own identities. There's bound to be that element of otherness. But that otherness was, the gap of otherness was narrowed down to the narrowest possible gap. I think that was important for us today. Yeah, in other words, universal elements can contribute. The sharing of common ideas can contribute to the basically the narrowing of our separateness, of our differences. and philosophy played a very important role in that. Now, when you go, for example, to say to India in the 10th century, you have this famous scholar Al-Biruni. So Al-Biruni, he lived, he was a contemporary of Ibn Sina in the basically 10th century, 11th century. Al-Biruni has been regarded by scholars as the most famous, the greatest Muslim scientist ever to have lived. So, but he was also a social scientist. Apart from being well known in natural science, he was a social scientist. So he wanted to study about Hinduism. Now, I'm sure many people say, well, if you want to measure that gap, that distance, that space that separates between Islam and Hinduism, it would be very, very, very wide indeed. But still, all right, for Al-Biruni, yeah, because he was interested in the studying that what is it that contribute to that otherness when we talk about Islam and Hinduism. So first of all, in the light of the theory of otherness that I mentioned earlier, so he wanted to know which school, which current of belief within Hinduism that would be the closest to Islam. In other words, the Islamic attachment to the idea of unity of God. Well, his study showed that yes, there were in other he could find beliefs within the world of Hinduism. He could find ideas, beliefs that that came quite close to what Islam believed, is kind of unity. So, but what I mean here, that was the kind of the thinking, the kind of the mindset that influenced the Muslims in when they come to evaluate other religions, to study other religions. In other, how what is the degree of commitment to the idea of Tawhid or of unity, to the unitary perspective. Basically, that's what we have. Yeah? So the same thing when we go to China. In other words, we have the stories. We have written records showing that especially towards the later part of the Ming dynasty, when we began to have this cultural encounter, philosophical encounter in China between the Muslims and the Confucians, and because some of these Muslim scholars were knowledgeable about Confucius, about his teaching, and then they tried to compare to Islam. But whatever it is, the Muslim ulama tried to understand Confucius in the light of the Islam's theory of the religious other. They say, some of them said, well, the Confucianism is legitimate to be considered. The Confucians are legitimate to be called the people of the book, right? Yes, some Muslims today, I mean, because they have been thinking that when the term people of the book is mentioned, they means to refer to Christian and the Jews. But in the Quran, the idea of people of the book is very general. Yes, in history, the Jews and the Christians were the earliest people of the book to be encountered by Muslims. But when Islam spread to other parts of the world, where they encountered Buddhism, Confucianism, Hinduism, then they posed this question. Basically, it's a philosophical question. Yes, also theological question. The question is, are these the followers of these different religions? They have books. They believe in the sacred scriptures. So are they considered, are they fit to be considered as people of the book? Although the early Muslims did not meet them. So, but if you go by the universal criteria, the meaning that these books were of divine origin, sent for, given to their followers for different reasons, for different, in other words, for the different objectives in mind, then they come up to this very interesting. Yes, I mean they also deserve to be called the people of the book. So the famous historian, this Rashiduddin Fadlullah, for example, in Central Asia, who studied about Buddhism, who wrote also the biography of Buddha, and then made the conclusion that the followers, or rather the followers of religion are considered to be the people of the book. That goes that one as well with followers of Confucianism in China. So I think I'll stop there. It's sorry for more than 45 minutes, and I promise. So thank you very much, and I'll be happy to entertain any questions. And Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh, and a very good afternoon, everyone.
Thank you so much, Prof. Osman, for the very enlightening lecture and sharing of knowledge. We truly appreciate it. Ladies and gentlemen, in his lecture, interestingly, Prof. Osman has managed to uncover the deep meaning and understanding or interpretations of the very word Islam, with its 4 dimensions of etymology, philosophy, theology, scriptural, and institutional, which are all present in the Quran. And also with regards to Islam and the religious other, it is interesting to note that the argument made by Prof. Osman that Islam is in possession of a rather comprehensive universal theory of the religious other. So I think in about an hour or so, Prof has managed to uncover, these gems, which also include the framework of Islam's theory of the religious other in the Quran. Some of the important points which he highlighted in this framework is, for example, the universality of religions, the idea of the true religion, and the claim or the notion that Islam is an inclusive religion, and also finally how Islam views other religion, which he highlights the definition of the notion of otherness, and so on. All right, we do have time, about 20 minutes or so for Q&A, and I would like to open to everyone who are following this webinar to ask questions, and appreciate if the questions can be posed at the chat box. All right. I guess I have to start with a comment and question, Professor. I'm not seeing anyone typing here. Maybe if you don't mind, I start with a very simple question, Professor. Is that okay? Yeah. Yeah. I believe that what you have presented is extremely important in the light of today's situation, where Islam is considered one of the few religions that have been deeply misunderstood, right? And this is primarily because or partly due to claims made by certain Muslims that Islam is the only correct religion that lead one to salvation, right? And they claim that people of other religion must be disavowed, right? And as you know, that with the rise of Muslim extremists and violent Islamism, the most extreme of these people will justify killing the religious other. So these hostile positions and perceptions of non-Muslims are formulated through perverted interpretation of Quranic verses. But in reality, as you have highlighted in your lecture, that the Quran itself speaks volumes about embracing religious plurality, inclusivism, right? And it values the notion of human dignity, for example, and mention about people of the religious other, like the Jews and the Christians. But why is this foundation of a positive interfaith relations, which has been deeply rooted in our Islamic tradition, is not really, as I see it at least, being really appreciated in the contemporary period?
Yes, I think the what you said is it's correct. In other words, I referred earlier to the verse of the Quran. That verse said, whosoever, just bagi the translation, whosoever submits, aslama, the word in the Quran is aslama, whoever submits himself to God, to submit himself to God, and he is doing good, then he is rewarded. Then for him is a big reward from God, and he will no fear and sadness on his part. Now, of course, here the question, that verse was revealed in response to basically to exclusivism, exclusive claim made by followers of different religions, then their religions alone will be safe, not the others. So I think that that's just one example. There are other examples. The point is, the spirit of the Quran is then those who worship God, those who believe in the one God, those who do good, avoid evil, they receive rewards from God. So I suppose the reason, therefore, has nothing to do with religion. It is historical, it is political, it is miseducation. In other words, not receiving the right understanding from the Quran itself. I think that is the problem, misunderstanding of the Quran. So what we propose to do is that Muslim, if this happens, we are dealing with Muslim, then Muslim should go and read the Quran again. Should try to read the Quran and see. Yeah. So I think there's a misunderstanding. Of course, that verse which often repeated during Friday prayers or something like that. Verily, the religion before God is Islam. But if you understand the word, that's why I wanted to spend some time explaining the meaning of the word Islam, right? Islam. So I referred in my book, Islamic Civilization and the Modern World, 2nd chapter, I quoted this verse and I referred to the interpretation by the uncle of the Prophet. There is Ibn Abbas. He made clearly that the word Islam in that verse is not restricted to Islam that was given to Prophet Muhammad. In other words, that was the religion given to all the prophets from Prophet Adam until Muhammad. Then the generic name of that religion is submission, Islam, to be understood as submission. You remember that the first Muslims who heard that word, they did not mean that they just referring to Islam that was brought to the Prophet Muhammad, but also the Islam that was given to the previous prophets and messengers. One source, one other misunderstanding is that there's the need to distinguish between Islam, the spirit, Islam, the soul, and Islam, the form, meaning the law. In the traditional understanding, Muslim traditional understanding of this is that all prophets were given the same tawhid, the same belief in unity of God. But the Sharia the law, the sacred law, that varies from prophet to prophet. For example, the sacred law of Prophet Moses is not the same as the sacred law of Prophet Muhammad, but both of them believe in the idea of oneness of God. I think that is basically the explanation. It's very, very clear. There's nothing very complicated about that.
Thank you for the explanation. Now questions are coming in. Maybe I can choose some of it, maybe two first. One is, can you touch on the notion of equality in the Islamic theory and relations with the religious other? Right? That's question one. And question
Equality,
two.
sorry, equality?
Yeah. Can you touch on the notion of equality in the Islamic theory and relations with the religious other? Maybe you want to address this first.
Yeah. Well, each religion is different. Each religion has its own identity. And to the extent that this conform to the spirit of their origin, that is as revealed by God, they are equal. They're all religions of Allah. They are God's religion, right? But each religion has its own. The question of which religion is valid or not, that is for God to decide. It's not what we can do. Yes, we can do a comparative religion. We compare, but in order to judge a particular religion, whether that religion is accepted by God or not, that is beyond beyond our means. But moreover, that is not the real purpose. The purpose is that we should seek to understand each other. So in other words, yes, it is possible, especially in the context of our time, that Muslims can study other religions, Christianity, Judaism, Buddhism, and so on. That is open to us. And each religion, because its own identity, it has its own peculiarities. Yeah. So that in other words, there was wisdom. Why God reveals different religions and yet it's not exactly the same. Yeah? In other words, God has revealed his religion in accordance with the names of the times and the places.
Yeah.
I think basically that. Yeah.
Thank you, Prof. There's a request for you to elaborate a bit about the point that I think you made about the different interpretations of submission to the divine, which varies from prophet to prophet. Maybe you can elaborate a little bit about this.
Yes. Each religion that has been revealed by God to a particular prophet has its own identity, and that identity comprises two elements. One is the element of belief, which I said earlier, from the perspective of the Quran, it is belief in the unity of God, which is called Tawheed, of course. But even the language in which that unity is being formulated, that varies. We cannot expect, I mean, in other words, you know very well the idea of the concept of the axial religions, in example. So the structure of religion has not remained the same. That has always changed in the history of time. But what is important to be understood, a simple message is, when it comes to belief, apart from the language used, the kind of expression used to describe that belief, then is the same. But when it comes to sacred law, the rituals, what rituals we do, what is our concept of fasting? Fasting, the Quran says, has been prescribed to humankind from the ancients, from the ancient time. But the exact format of that fasting has not remained the same. This the Buddhist fasting is not the same as the Muslim fasting. The Jewish fasting is not the same, but the spirit, the wisdom of the fasting has been the same. Yeah, the wisdom of that, but the format has changed. The details, you know, have different. That's what I meant. And you can just extend it to others, to all other sectors of life. In other words, the way a religion organized society is different, yeah, from how the other religion do that. But the only thing here, that, of course, yes, since Islam claims to be the last of the religion, the last, in other words, Islamic Sharia is the last of the Sharia. So there is a sense in which being the last, Islam has certain teachings that are different. Of course, this is very important. Of course, it is something that can be debated, I know. But as far as Islam is concerned, since it is the last religion, it is committed to upholding certain things, to being precisely being the last. Yeah? Simply that, I mean, since there is not going to be any more revealed religion to humankind. So Muslims, being the owners, being the believers, the last religion, have commitments, have spiritual commitments. In fact, it is a question of responsibility here. Muslims, being the believers in the Quran, the last revealed book, being the upholders of the last sacred law, Muslims have a very important responsibility to the rest of humanity. They should talk. They, more than any other people, they should talk to the followers of other religion. This is what we believe God has given us, and we are told this is the last. Let us sit down what it means, what does it mean to our relationship, because we want to see a peaceful world, a world in which, yes, we can follow different religions, and yet we can live in harmony with each other. In fact, Muslims have that responsibility because they were given certain teachings not to be found in the other religion. They are not supposed to keep to themselves. They must share that. Thank you.
Thank you, Prof. Osman, for the explanation. A question from a participant. The question goes like this. What is your view on Naguib al-Atta's theory of religion, which differentiates between millah and deen, where the true religion is deen, namely Islam, while the religion before Islam is more accurately called millah, which is more accurately said to be a kind of formative state of religion?
Well, you're putting me on spot. It's not nice, for me to comment on my teacher, but then I beg to, I have a different understanding. I explained this in my PhD thesis many years ago, and my thesis was submitted in 1987. 1987, I published that in my book, this classification of knowledge in Islam, and I reproduced Al-Farabi's arguments when he tried to explain between religion and philosophy. Sure. And then I answered some opinions regarding this distinction between religion and philosophy. But I said that Al-Farabi, for example, distinguished between religion translated as din and religion translated as millah. The two do not refer to the same thing. Millah is an aspect of deen as understood in Islam. So it refers more to the societal dimensions, to the referring basically to what I said earlier, the pillars of societal living. That refer to that. The idea of the community living, basically religion as a community rather than religion as such. I think when we refer to religion as such, go back to remember that Gabriel Hadith. All right. The question: what is Islam? That refers to the pillars of society, the pillars of social life. Yeah. But what is Iman? That Iman is of course, that is the core religion. It refers to the beliefs. But then the word Deen altogether combines Iman, Islam, Ihsan. Ihsan. In other words, there is that the quality dimension of belief and social life. So when referring to the millah of Nabi Ibrahim, Ibrahim, that refers basically to referring to the Abrahamic community, his community, his millah. Of course, it's guided by religion. That community is guided by religion.
Thank you, Prof. Maybe I can pose you this question. We know that the Jewish-Islamic spiritual collaboration in the Middle Ages was so remarkable. Jewish rabbinic figures such as Saadia Gaon even identified themselves as Muwahhid, the people of Tawheed. Do you think it was a unique phenomenon in history, such as a spiritual alliance could spring up and develop only against the special cultural background of medieval Islam in the Arab East?
You know, when it comes to spiritual belief, it is belief about the absolute, about God, the absolute God. Basically, there was no difference between Islam and Judaism. Jews and Muslims converge, concur on on Tawheed. Where the Muslims and Christians have always been at odds right from the beginning, right from the beginning, is politics. It's about the state. It's about it's basically that's what encountered. For example, we know very well that the Jews were involved from the very beginning of the foundation of Islam in terms of with whom they were siding and with whom they were against. So that's as far as the Muslim and the Christian and the Jews are concerned. So that's why there is a very close relationship between the Sharia of Islam and the Sharia of the Jews in the Torah, the law, the Torah, the Jewish law. Of course, as I said, since the Mosaic law was not identical with the Muhammadan law, all right, there are many things that were accepted in Mosaic law were not to be found in Muhammadan law. But the idea is that in terms of similarities, the Jews and the Muslims have the idea of sacred language, which Christianity does not have. Yeah, the sacred language of Islam is Arabic. The sacred language of Judaism is Hebrew. Both have this sacred law. Both believe in Tawheed. I said, yes, on the others, they differ. And basically, I said, it's political. You're talking about that. I mean, you're asking me about that. So, so we find that the Jewish scholars in the Middle Ages and in the Middle Ages, they basically were together with the Muslims in the field of philosophy, specifically in the legal philosophy, but even on the other branches of philosophy. And yeah, that's the situation.
Thank you, Prof. Osman, for addressing all the questions. Unfortunately, we do not have time to address all the questions. I apologize for that because the time is 4:30 and we have to end our session. But before we end today's webinar, Professor Osman, is there any final words of wisdom or knowledge that you want to share with the participants before we end today's webinar, please?
Yes, thank you, Brother Muhammad Ali. Well, my advice to my Muslim brothers and sisters, I mean, let us go to the Quran. And the Quran, the heart of the Quran is philosophy. So if you want to study philosophy, then let us really study the Quran. And that philosophy in the Quran is universal. It's not universal of all, and therefore we can share that with followers of the religions. Invite them, invite the followers of the religion to this hikmah, which is the heart of the Quran. And also I think many of the things which the Muslims believe are not true. I think again it is good that we go back to the Quran for our reference. Now, for the others, my advice is then regard the Quran not as a Muslim book. The Quran itself says it is a book sent to the whole of humankind. Yeah. So in other words, the Quran is not the property of Muslims alone. It is the property of all humanity. So anybody who can refer to the Quran will benefit from it according to what the objectives are. So I think and of course regarding the topic for discussion today, I think we should try to encourage inter-religious dialogue, especially at the intellectual level. I think because that is the position of the Quran itself. The Quran said, invite to the ways of God with wisdom and with the teachings that are good and that are true and beautiful. Yeah. So yes, the Quran also says dialogue. Have dialogue with them, argue with them with the best possible approach. So if this is the spirit that we need to emphasize, that we need to keep alive in the contemporary world, because today we live as neighbors. We people of different religious faiths, different belief system, are neighbors, co-workers, and in the same office and factory and so on. But sad to say, despite we being claiming that we are very literate, there's one illiteracy that we need to overcome. There's cultural illiteracy. In other words, we are not literate when it comes to culture, whether in the advanced countries in the West or anywhere. Yeah. So cultural literacy is paramount. That we need to understand each other in the deeper sense of the word. Thank you very much. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh.
Waalaikumsalam warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Thank you so much for the very enlightening, interesting presentation that you have given to us, Prof, today. And I think an hour and a half is definitely not sufficient for us to learn from you. We look forward to have more engagements and learning from your good self. And we hope that you will accept our future invitations to
Thank you.
lecture and share your knowledge with us. So finally, on behalf of the SRP program at RSAS NTU, I thank and all of us thank Professor Osman Bakar for your participation and for your time today. And we truly appreciate that you are able to give some of your very precious time to share your wisdom and knowledge with us. And we hope we look forward to have more discussions and engagement with your good self. Thank you so much. And I thank all the participants for attending today's webinar. And I hope the participants will make some time to give your feedback as well. Thank you, Professor Osman, and have a good Ramadan, which will start, inshallah, next week.